Hey everybody, welcome to Works in Progress with Frank Fratello. I'm your host, Casey Kasem. Today I'm joined by my good friend Maigan Lynn. Maigan,
Hi.
how are you?
Good. How are
So
you?
I'm awesome. So I'm excited to invite you to the show. You've been a big supporter of the show, and I can't tell you how much your support and your comments on every single episode have meant to me. It's been great to know that somebody's watching the show and getting something out of it. So you've been high on my list since the start to have you on the show because of
Yeah.
conversations that we had privately about anxiety, right?
Yeah.
So, and this is something that you've dealt with a lot. And before we do a deep dive on that, hang on a
Yeah.
second,
All right.
because this is a show about artists and the creative life and that kind of thing. So give me a little background here. How long have you been doing art professionally?
Um, Probably about around 18 years now at this point. It's
So you
been
started when you were 4.
no, I just turned 37.
Oh,
So it was about 19, 20, 21, somewhere in there. It was something I'd always wanted to do, but it just kind of came about as almost necessity. Anxiety is gonna intertwine into everything that I talk about here, but it was,
cool.
I had started going to college for graphic design. I got really sick with anxiety and had to move back home. So I was home for a few years, and then, I've known my husband since I was probably 9, 10 years old, since I was 4. So we started dating and then eventually moved in together. But at that point, my anxiety was still really bad and I couldn't work outside the home. So I thought, well, this is an opportunity. It's right in your face. Let's try it out. So I started creating art cards, ACEO cards, art cards, editions, and originals. So they're tiny, like playing card size. And I said, well, we'll throw them up on eBay and see what happens. And it just it took off from there. So yeah, about 18 years, 18, 17.
Okay, so the segue here is brilliant because you've already done my job for me. All right.
You're
So
welcome.
I love this. All right. So one of the things that I do in my coaching practice, right? I'm a mindset coach, right? And I'm
Mhm.
an artist. So one of the things that I do in my mindset practice is I ask the question, what's right about this I'm not getting? Right. So like every time like some horrible situation occurs or some tragedy befalls or like there's something horrible happening, I'm like, okay, what's right about this that I'm not getting right
Yeah.
now? Right. There's an upside to everything. What is it? What am I not seeing? Right. And like I refocus on that. And like you did that naturally. You're
Yeah.
like, okay, I'm crippled with anxiety. I can't go outside the house and work. What's right about this I'm not getting? Now I get to be a professional artist.
Yeah.
Boom.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm like, when you first said, like, I kind of, it was, I forget how you phrase it, but it was like, kind of the best option was to become a professional artist. And like, who says that?
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
Like, who gets to say that? Everybody else is like, no, go work at Pizza Hut. Right. Like, but
Yeah.
like, no, not you. Right. What a tremendous opportunity that afforded you. Right.
Yeah.
To,
Yeah.
to cope with your anxiety and at the same time develop skills. So you started early as an artist.
Yeah.
Now, the business model for artists has changed dramatically over the course of your career. So
Yes.
how have you adapted to that along the way?
It's been interesting. When I first started, I had no idea what I was doing. Like I said, it was out of necessity. And I was fortunate in my situation that, my husband, he was then my fiance, we were stable income wise that way. So it afforded me the opportunity. I'm sure I would have had been on disability or something if that hadn't been the case. Because I was really it was really bad. It was not functional at all. But I mean, I've gone through like the recession, when the recession hit, the global recession, but I had a lot of my fan base in the United States. I'm in Canada. So even though we weren't as hard impacted in our community, I mean, we were in some ways, but it wasn't, our housing market didn't crash the same way that it did in the US. Like there weren't things like that happening as much here. But it meant that the people that it was happening to, my fan base, they were having to readjust financially. They were having to, art wasn't a priority anymore. So I had to readjust. I had to refocus my way of putting my work out there, and finding new ways, new creative ways of being accessible and offering what I could. And I remember I started doing daily deals at the time, so you could get like bundles of art, and I was trying everything possible. But the thing was, I think it was Heather, I think when you interviewed Heather, she said, or it might have been Deanna, try something, just do it, take the leap, do it. And if it doesn't work out, then it doesn't work out. But you have to at least make yourself available to fail in order to progress, in order to move with whatever's happening at the time. So yeah, it's changed not only with that, like, what's that? Sorry.
No. This is a great thing that you're talking about, right? Because like, it's this willingness to fail, right? It's this willingness to try and get it wrong. Yeah. And then, okay, that didn't work. What else can I try? What else is there? What else is possible, right? That whole mindset I've found is almost universally key to success.
Yeah.
Right. That willingness to fail, because it's like, I'm going to try one thing, and that one thing has to work, right? If that's the mindset you go in with and it fails,
yeah,
then
you have nowhere to go
and you're done, right? Then you're done, right?
Yeah.
So this whole thing is everything that you're talking about, like you're arriving at this stuff like with just all on your own. This is amazing. And I find that that's been the truism across all of our guests so far, is like this willingness to keep trying and keep failing and find out what works and find out what doesn't.
Yeah.
So plus, I mean, like you didn't have, like when you started, like Amazon didn't exist yet. No. There were no sites like in print or Redbubble or anything like that, right? Like, I mean, like you were putting up your site on what, GeoCities or something?
It started just on eBay, and then eventually I moved over to Etsy before Etsy had a lot of their current issues and stipulations with artists. And then it moved to my own website. Like, I didn't start my own website for a long time, but then I started branching out to things like Zazzle or whatever print-on-demand companies, a few different licensing companies at the same time. But I think with me, I know anxiety is not a good thing for anybody, but when I showed up to the art industry, there was a few years before that where anxiety had already kicked my ass, so to speak, like handed it to me big time. Had decided that I was going to go to college and I was going to do these big things and I was going to be a graphic designer. And then I think I was 2 months into it and everything fell apart. I remember sitting in class and I felt funny, and I was staring at the back wall, and I was staring at a clock and looking at it thinking, I need to get out of here. What's wrong with me? Like, I need to leave. So I got up and I went to the bathroom and I was like, okay, take a breath. Everything's fine. Like, you're okay. Are you sick? Like, what's happening? And then I went back to class and the same thing happened. I thought, this is unreal. So then it slowly progressed to, okay, well, now I can't make it to class, or I can only make it to half the classes. And I was giving my work to a friend of mine to hand in for me. Fun fact, I actually ended up passing one of my courses just by submitting my work through my friend. I wasn't actually showing up, and I was like, okay. But most of them, I ended up dropping out before the first semester was even done because I was so sick. Like, I lost weight. I wasn't eating. The boyfriend that I was living with at the time, him and I broke up, and I ended up having to move my whole life back home. I quit my job, everything. It was like, we are done with this. Could barely leave the apartment, definitely couldn't leave the apartment without medication. So I moved back home with my mom and dad, had a few years of really tumultuous, like making bad decisions, just trying to figure this thing out because the resources at the time weren't there. There weren't I remember the first therapist that I ever went to, because I was still covered under my mom's insurance, luckily, when I moved home. First therapist I went to, we were supposed to have 8 sessions covered. My second session in, she looked at me and she said, "You don't need therapy." And I was like, what? My whole life just completely went in the trash can. What do you mean I don't need therapy? She's like, "You're smart. You can figure this out. You totally understand it." And I thought, if I had stopped there, I don't even want to know some of the clients that she may have had after me, because that was a horrible thing to somebody who had anxiety. But I came to the art scene with nothing, with already having failed at what I was going to do. So I experienced the failure. And at that point I was like, whatever happens from here is whatever happens. Because I had already had, the plan and then the letdown. Like I made the plan and then it didn't work out at all on any level. Like it was horrendous. And I thought, well, here's your life lesson. You can't plan everything specifically. And the plan that I had in place, like the graphic design, that was kind of a compromise plan in the first place. So it was kind of like the universe saying, what are you doing? Which, I mean, it's hard to look at anxiety as kind of a blessing, but
no, but let me ask you this. Okay, so
yeah,
how much of your anxiety, looking back on it now, do you think was a resistance to the life path that you had chosen that you knew wasn't truly in alignment for you?
100%. I mean, it
Right?
stemmed from somewhere else entirely, but it had been, I had anxiety a lot longer than I ever realized I did when it finally blew up into this big mess. But it was always, it was enough to deal with, like I could get by, or I never even recognized what it was before. Like my sister was very, she was more max relax, and I always just seemed very on edge, just very serious, very prim and proper, didn't want to break the rules, like just very stiff in life. So, I mean, my teenage years, I was such a boring teenager. But then, it progressed. And then I decided, okay, I'm going to leave home. And this was the first really big step on my own, making decisions. I mean, it was a compromise decision, but I was doing something. And then it was just like, no, you haven't been dealing with any of this. And now you're going to do this big thing. And you have all these things that you haven't dealt with, like this knot ball of things. And here it is now. You don't have a choice. Like, this is not working. Your life cannot go like this. So yeah, absolutely, 100%. It was the resistance that kind of, yeah.
And all those things that you're denying reaches this critical mass, right? Like,
yeah.
There's only so long that your psyche is willing to put up with that kind of, like, listen, we know who we are, right? At the core of us, we know which way is north, and you keep pointing the boat south.
Yeah.
Like, I'm dropping an anchor. That's it. I'm dropping an anchor. We're not going anywhere.
Peace out. We're done with this.
That's it. Yeah. We're done. Yeah. You know what? You can just drop the sails. We're not going anywhere until you get this sorted out, young miss. Right? Like,
that's exactly what it was. And it's funny, like, to talk about it now and to know the perspective of it. It's completely different than how it actually felt, because it was the darkest time. And it's funny because now that the pandemic is kind of, it's upon us and we're in isolation, everything here is technically fine. But there are days where I'm still sitting on that edge, and it takes all the tools and it takes all the work that I've accumulated over the last 18 years to just, because I'm sitting there and I can see things are positive. We have the positive things to look forward to. We have work. Your work is awesome. Like, you enjoy doing it. Life is pretty good. But then there's the what if. You can see the other side of it too. And it's so close some days that it's like, nope. bring on those tools. In a way, I think the last 18 years has been kind of preparation for what we're currently experiencing. And that's also tough to say because I'm not perfect at it either. But there is, it just needs more tools right now. That's all.
Right. And I really think that every day prior has been a preparation for the day you're living now.
Oh yeah.
Right? And some of that is simply getting to a place where you can acknowledge that I don't have all the tools I need right now.
Yeah.
Right. And that's an important realization to have. And that's an important, place to come to, where you realize, okay, where I need to go next, I don't have the tools to get there right now.
Yeah.
So how do I get those tools? And that's kind of where somebody like me comes in, right? With, like, your mindset literally affects everything else in your life. It is the tide by which raises all the other boats, right? Your work, your family, your relationships, your everything about you stems from how you view the world, how you view yourself, how you view your family. It's all inside you. And how you respond to external factors is also a function of you.
Yeah.
Right? Because there are some people who are thriving right now. So it's like,
yeah, there are. Yeah. That was a point that I kind of wanted to touch on too, because you were saying how everything, leading up to now, it was in preparation. But there was a point, I remember when things first started, like when anxiety first hits you, it's a beast if you don't know what it is. And I mean, I'd seen my dad kind of go through it a little bit. So, but that was the only person nobody was talking about it. Nobody I knew had experienced it. And then when I was going through it, I felt completely all by myself. You could be in a room full of people and it would be the loneliest place on earth because it was just such a distraction. It was just such a, you weren't grounded, you weren't focused, you were so stuck in your thoughts. So there wasn't, my perception at that time was, this is awful. This is going to ruin me. It's ruined everything. How am I going to get out of this? Like, there's no way out. It's so dark. I don't have help. Like, I was doing all the negative self-talk. And when I moved in with my then fiance, now husband, I started, I knew I couldn't live like that for forever. I was still in that, okay, I want to do the things that are positive, and I know I want to do the things that are positive, but I don't know how. So I started reaching out to counseling resources, just trying to find anything that I could. I hit every dead end probably on the planet. And then they had, through the hospital at the time, they had a free resource, and it was social workers that were trying to get some experience under their belt. And progress into, different fields. And I just happened to have one. Her name was Julie, and I will never forget her because she changed my entire life. I actually had to have her come to the house because I couldn't leave at the time. So I was experiencing some levels of agoraphobia. And she came in with somebody else at the time, and we started talking and figuring things out. And she said, okay, she's like, these are free sessions. I'm willing to take you on if you're willing to do the work. And just through our counseling and some of the techniques that she used with me, there were so many light bulb moments. And it's so funny because I'm like, I knew I was smart enough to understand that, but because of the anxiety, that wall, I couldn't get there by myself. And I love those moments, those light bulbs that are like, oh my goodness, that's an actual thing that I can control. That's a thing that I get to, it changed my perception. But it was a lot of work to get there. Like, that didn't just happen on its own.
So for those watching, if you've never had an anxiety attack or a panic attack, it's something that's really hard to explain, right? I mean, there's this panicky feeling where, like, well, for me anyway, like, I want to run away in every direction simultaneously.
Yeah.
Right. Like, there's no one safe area. Like, there's no safe place.
No.
And so I've had 2 heart attacks now. My last heart attack was just back in August. And I will tell you, from an educated point of view, that my anxiety attacks feel exactly like heart attacks. And I know that because I've had 2 heart attacks. And so that's a terrifying prospect for me. Every time I feel an anxiety attack coming on, right, I'm like, am I going to die this time? Is this an anxiety attack or is this a heart attack? And how long do I wait before I call an ambulance? And I'm going to feel silly if it's just an anxiety attack. And so I'm like, you literally, I'm sitting there balancing my life and death versus what I think might be going. Like, it's a horrible place to exist.
Yeah.
And I get that. We're like, and I've done nothing but the work, right? Like, this is what I do, right? And so, like, even with all of these tools, I mean, there's something in your either your psyche or your brain chemistry or a combination of both that's just sometimes it feels like it's just out to get you.
Yeah.
There's a part of me that's working against me.
Yeah.
And there's that enemy within that can be so challenging to face. I tell you though, I want to talk quickly about, or not quickly, whatever you want to do. I want to talk about the art community.
Okay.
Because, for me, when we talk about, leaning into failure, I think that there are a few communities who are more willing to do that and talk about that than artists.
Yeah.
Right? I was watching a live stream with Carla Ortiz last week, and she was painting and she was doing a fan art of Cloud from Final Fantasy. And somebody had commented in the comments, they said, somebody asked, like, some famous painter, John Singer Sargent or something, like, you know, what's the hardest thing in the world to draw? And they said the other eye. And I'm like, and every artist knows that struggle, right? I drew this one eye really good. And then like you go to draw that other eye, I can't get that one to match. And like, you don't want to just take it in Photoshop and flip it. Like, you know, but like, I love that the camaraderie in the comments in that moment with every artist going, preach, yes.
Or right. Hands is another one.
Right, yeah.
Hands, it's so funny.
But I love how we all have this shared failure.
Yeah.
Where it's like all of our successes are built on our failures.
Yeah.
All of them, right? And not a single one of us sat down with a pencil for the first time and it's like, oh, look, it's the Mona Lisa. Like, you know, more no like way. Picasso, right? Like,
yeah.
You know, if that's as far as we wanted to take it, fine. But.
I think that's so funny though, because in the art community, when you're first starting, you very quickly fail. Like if you're not failing within the first couple of weeks, like that's a shock to me. Some people get really lucky. I understand, like some people have, you know, it's all who who your influences are around you. If you have somebody who's been doing this for a while, I didn't have anybody. I had the internet and I had my idea of what, you know, selling art was like. But I mean, I sold my first couple of art cards for like $1 each. And like, it was success to me at the time, but if I had been a more established artist looking at it, like now, I would have been like, yikes, like, yay, success, you got your foot through the door, do what you have to do. But that may have been underselling yourself a little bit, but you don't know what you don't know. And if you're not willing to put yourself out there and fail, you can't progress. So yeah, like with the anxiety and with the art, it's just failure after failure after failure.
Yeah, but I'm talking specifically about this, how supportive, at least I've found that the art community is incredibly supportive of that because everybody has faced those same, exactly the same challenges, right? Where like for the longest time I've been charging $15 for this, and I'm at a level now where I feel like I should be charging 40 or 50.
Yeah.
But I'm afraid I'm going to lose my existing client base if I suddenly jump price.
Yeah.
Right. And I think everybody knows that struggle, right? Where it's like, I don't want to lose my existing, because I've spent a long time building that audience.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, how did you grow, you know, over those 18 years? When did you make your jumps? How did that work for you?
I think like going back to the art community, when I first started, like I said, on eBay, at that time, I don't know if they do it now, but they used to have community groups, and I joined a couple of those, and they were all art card related. And that was how many years ago, and I still have most of my art community is people from those groups, and they are wonderful. They have always been, they saw me, some of them were, you know, they'd been doing this for a little while, and they see this kid coming in who doesn't know anything. I was willing to ask questions. I didn't come in arrogant. That's just not been my style. So maybe that helped me in them wanting to take me under their wing a little bit and kind of guide me along. But whenever I had a question, they were always so willing to answer. And there wasn't any judgment. It was just, oh, okay, I'll try this. Or, you know, just pointers in materials and pointers in selling. And just like, I learned so much just from that. But even after moving past eBay, I've managed to keep some of that collective of friends, but I've added on. And it's like, I'm always so impressed with the people that I find or that find me, because I can't complain about any of them. They're amazing. It is the best community on the planet, but it does come from, you know, this camaraderie of failure, and knowing that that's a part of the lifestyle and that's a part of this type of job, and accepting it. And that's one of the other things, one of the biggest tools I learned, and it's only been within the last 5-7-ish years how to do it properly, is sitting through discomfort and understanding that that's part of the process. So whether it's art and something, you know, disastrous has happened, you sit with it, you let it be uncomfortable, you let it suck for a little bit, and then you start working on how to figure this out. It's the same with my anxiety, because when anxiety attack comes on, you're sitting there like, oh no, this is bad. This can't happen. But if you sit with it and you start focusing on things that are true and things that you know, okay, I'm not dying, practice your breathing. You're going to get through this. This is temporary. All of those things. It's how you talk to yourself and how you manage the crisis. And fortunately, I have so many people around me, art-wise and in my personal life, who are willing to also do that and understand it. Because if you have people that are kind of pushing against that concept, it makes it a little difficult to implement. But yeah, I think that's been one of the most consistent things that kind of get me through different stages, is the community, understanding that discomfort and failure and those kinds of things are going to happen, and it's okay that they happen. Without those things, you can't get to the other side. So yeah.
Yeah. So for me, I've been in like an amateur. I still don't even consider myself a professional artist, right? I've been paid for art, and like shush. So shush you. Stop. Stop. I still function from this place in my head that I've got no business being out there. I've got no business being in these communities.
Yeah. But I don't think that fully ever goes away, because it's hard not to compare yourself. But I look at like I was telling you before, when I first started, the first thing I did was when I was 15, my family got the internet, and I searched fairy art on the internet, and I came across Amy Brown, and it blew my mind. Her art is amazing. And the fact that she was an artist and she was a person and she could sell her work, and like, it just put this idea into my head, like, people do this. But then when I first started, I was like, okay, Amy's this big artist, and she still is, she's amazing. But to me, she seemed untouchable. She seemed so far above what I was creating. And I mean, different skill levels, different styles, but at one point, when Facebook became a thing, because I'm older than Facebook as well, I decided one of these days, I'm like, I'm just going to send her a friend request. I saw that she was friends with other friends, and she accepted it. And I was like, and I don't get starstruck. I don't get, over the moon with anything, because I realize that people are people and everybody's a person. But this person I had found when I was so young and so impressionable, and she was kind of like this thread. She didn't even know it, but she was this thread for me that just, hey, you can do this. And I think you try not to compare yourself, and you try not to put yourself in a tier, but it's so hard not to. And there's always an element of imposter syndrome. I think what's that?
There's
Sorry.
also something, there's also something to the psychological effect of knowing something else is possible, right? Yeah. There's this the 4-minute mile effect, right? Yeah. Where like for like thousands of years, human beings have been running around on foot. Like that's what we've done. Like we run on foot, and then we run places, and then sometimes we run places and die doing it. Like the first guy who ran a marathon, he ran and then died. Like I don't know why this is a sport.
Yeah.
But the thing is that it was in 1957 or something where this guy, I think it was Roger Bannister, runs the first 4-minute mile ever. But for thousands of years, we've been running it. Everybody thinks this 4-minute mile is unachievable. And then this guy does it. And then a month later, somebody else does it because he'd broken that mental barrier that it couldn't be done.
Yeah.
And so this thing with Amy Brown and you, and for me, it was Ken Kelly. This knowledge that not only was it possible, but somebody was doing it. And like, I know them and I can talk, like they're real. Like it's not somebody who lived 100 years ago and it was a fluke. Like I'm watching it in real time. And this is possible for me too. Yeah. And that breaks that kind of psychological barrier that it can't be done. Right.
Yeah.
And so for me, joining the 78 Tarot Deck Project put me in, I have no business being out there. I just like, put me in touch with all of you amazing people, right? Almost, I think everybody who's been on the show so far has been in that deck.
78 Tarot, yeah.
Right? But like that community has been amazing because like that's where, for me, the first time, I got to join a community where people were sharing works in progress. That was a gift, right? Because you don't realize that like if you're outside of that community, mostly what you see, about 99% of the art that you see is finished work. And
Yeah.
you have no idea how they got there. Like, this is impossible. I'll never achieve that.
Yeah.
But then you see like the thumbnails and you see these rough drafts and you see the sketches and you see them refining pencil and you're like, oh, right. You do that too? Like, it doesn't immediately go to paint? Like,
Yeah.
I thought you were magic.
Right?
So again, it breaks that mental barrier. At least it did for me.
Yeah.
You know.
Fun story about the, because I've been in a few of the 78 tarot decks now. I'm actually, I'm going to be in this next one as well, which is kind of fun. Yay! The first time that they approached me to be a part of the deck, I said yes. I'm like, cool opportunity. All these amazing artists. Are you kidding? That's so incredible. And then I started seeing, I think I said this in one of the comments somewhere on one of the interviews. I started seeing the roster and like Larry Elmore and Jasmine Beckett Griffith and like all of these huge names that I was like, oh, they're the superstars. I broke down. I cried. I went to my husband, and this is so usually not me, because I'm like, there's a challenge. Okay, we feel scared. We're going to overcome it. We're going to find a way to do this. In most instances, there's some that I'm just like, peace out. That's not worth it. But in this one, I cried. I went to my husband. I'm like, I have to back out. He's like, what? I'm like, I can't do this. I can't put my work in a deck beside theirs. Like, that's embarrassing. And I'm not that person. So he was kind of looking at me like, no, I think you're fine. This isn't like, I had a moment and I got really hard on myself, and it blocked me from creating. The problem was I couldn't get past that thought for quite a while. So the first sketch that I put out for my card was garbage. It was so bad. And I'm like, normally situations like this, I thrive. Yeah. So what is happening here that I'm not able to thrive? And I realized I'm looking at these people like they're not people. I'm not that I should be on the same, like their skill levels vary from where I'm at and their experiences vary, but that's the case for everybody across the board. So I needed to kind of calm myself down, stop throwing such a wild fit, and just start using some of the tools that I would use with my anxiety, because that's what it was. It was anxiety over not being good enough, not meeting the standard, being a failure, giving them a product that they wouldn't be happy with, which I've done commission work before. I have never on that level crumbled to that extent. Like, it was awful. So that's my fun story. I did eventually get past it because I did start seeing them as people. I'm like, these are my people, and they're nice, they're wonderful. That's the other thing. They are incredibly kind and supportive and amazing.
Right.
Yeah. There was no reason to do that.
And the thing of it is that I have to keep reminding myself, because when I did the first deck with them, the Carnival deck, I choked. Mm-hmm. I choked bad. I choked hard. It was ugly. They had to scrape me up off the floor. It was bad. But the support from the community is what got me through that. Chris Malador, Delphine, both of them, privately in messaging and stuff. Like, I reached out to Chris and I was like, dude, I'm choking.
Yeah.
Help. Like, what, and Chris didn't so much give me art tips as he was like, you wouldn't have been invited if your work wasn't worthy of being here. You know what I mean? You've got the chops, you got the skill, let's just focus on one problem at a time. What do you think needs fixing in this thing? And I'm like, I don't think this works. He's like, okay, well, how would you fix that? Didn't tell me how to fix it. He just kept asking me questions that led me into my own answers. Yeah. Which is the best thing. Yeah. And like, now I approach this thing. I think this is the fourth deck that I'm going to be in, which is exciting for me, right? Like, I keep getting invited back. That's amazing. Yeah. Like, it's yay. I don't know what to do. It's like, I keep feeling like I was wearing like a hat and a hood, and like I walked through and nobody like checked my pass on the way in. Like, I keep sneaking in.
No way. No, because I've known Del for a few years before they started doing the 78 tarot, I think. Yeah, they wouldn't let you just sneak in. Like, that's not a, and I had to keep telling myself that same thing, because I felt like, oh, like there's this list and I'm down here and I just like snuck in by the skin of my teeth. I've done the same thing, but it's the mental concepts you have to get past, because they're your own. How other people are viewing it is completely different. Like your art is fantastic. And you know all the mistakes, and you know, I think it was Kira that said, you know where all the dead bodies are. And I loved it. It stuck with me. I'm like, I laughed so hard at that part. But that's exactly it. You know where all of the issues are. Nobody else is going to be, you know, unless you ask for those kind of critiques. A lot of the time it is just the mental hurdles you have to get past.
Oh man. So, you know, when we're talking about critiques, there's something that, God, so the biggest gift for me in regards to people's feedback on my art, or any art, right, is I keep forgetting that there's a question that needs to precede all of that, which is before anybody asks or anybody offers their feedback on something, the first question they should ask is, what were you trying to achieve when you did this?
Yeah.
Because now you have a lens through which to focus your critique.
Yeah.
Right? If I was trying for hyper realism and it looks like a Picasso painting, then we can have a discussion.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But if I'm aiming for a Picasso-esque abstract look and it looks abstract, then boom, good. That feedback comes back totally different. Now it's not subjective on whether or not you like it.
Yeah.
The feedback is now specific to what I was trying to achieve with it. And I think that that's really important, that we remember that as artists, that people's opinions of our work, we seem to be in this space as artists where like anything that we create and put out for the public to view is open to critique. And that's not necessarily so, right?
No.
Like, you're welcome to enjoy this.
Yeah.
But if you don't like it, you can shut the F up, right? Like,
that's, yeah, exactly.
Not asking for feedback. I'm asking you to enjoy it.
Yeah.
So
that's, I find when, and it's not just for art, because I find myself, and I shouldn't do it, but in just viewing the comment sections of different, you know, different outlets, whether it's political or it's news or just whatever. And just, I stopped participating. It used to drive me crazy, because I'm like, no, these people, I need to say something, because this isn't right. This is not how you treat people. And I just stopped, because I realized you kind of have to pull yourself back. When somebody throws something at you, or puts it out there and it's negative and it's awful, you can choose to react to it. You can choose to have a feeling about it, but you also, I think when you understand where they're coming from and you kind of pull yourself back and look at it through a different lens of like, detach yourself a little bit. You kind of have to, and try to understand, come at it from a place of understanding why they might have said that or where that might be coming from. You feel a little less responsible, which is important, I think, as artists, because we're very sensitive creatures by nature. We put a lot of ourselves into our work, but I think one of the most important tools we do need to have is to be able to pull ourselves back and say, why are they saying that? Why is it important for them to get that aspect out? And I've learned to just be, okay, you can say that. It's fine that you say, I don't agree. I wasn't necessarily asking for that. But you came from a place where you felt you needed to say it, and we have different perceptions on it, and it's okay.
Yeah, you know, it's funny for me, because like if I ask for feedback, I'm more okay with it than when it just arrives.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Because that would just be like me walking into your house and going, damn, your kids are ugly. Like, what the heck? What?
It's very personal.
Look
and
at
it's
the
hard
buck teeth
not...
on that kid. Jesus Christ. Like, you know, like you would never do that to somebody, right? You never like, oh man, that kid's got that walleye, man. That's crazy, right? Like, you never do that, right? But like, these are actually, you know, creations of ours. And you know, I did this painting recently of a performer named Pipsy Pinwheel. and she
Okay.
does these the Bay Area. I met her at the Bay Area Renaissance Festival that I was working with Deanna DeVoy, and I did this portrait of her because I was so taken in by her,
Hmm.
and I knocked it out very quickly for me. It was like a one sitting painting, and it turned out really well, I thought. And somebody online asked me how long that took me, and I said 52 years,
Yeah.
because that's how long it took me, right? That's how long it took me to do that in 2 hours,
Yeah.
right? It was 52
All
years
of
of
your
drawing
skills.
all the time and painting, and like, and like it's a dramatic analogy, but like I always consider like entrepreneurship and art and the art path is like, if you want to be an accountant, there's not only a path for you to follow, there's a super highway, right?
Yeah.
There's, I mean, like, there's no tolls or anything. Like, you literally, you go to school, you get this degree, you come out, they give you a job, you die. That's
Yeah.
it. Like, there's your path in life, right? But like, if you want to be an artist, um, there's this thing where like you're like hacking your way through a jungle
Yeah.
using nothing but the bones of your prior failures, like sharpened
Yeah.
into a blade, right? Like, it's the work involved in like creating your own style and finding your own voice and all of that,
Yeah.
because somebody can show you how to hold a pencil, but nobody can show you how to draw like you.
Yeah.
And ultimately your voice and the mark that you make is going to be unique to you.
Yeah.
And the best part of being an artist is when you lean into that, and when
Hmm.
you accept that that's not a wrongness, that this is actually my style, it's developing as I'm doing it. Like,
Yeah.
I don't have to go searching for my style, I just have to let it develop. And
That's
so
the best part. That's exactly it. The thing is, though, I think with like you said, we're hacking our way through a jungle with, the bones of our previous failures. Excellent analogy.
putting that on a t-shirt, by the
Yes,
way.
yes, do it. Uh, there's a very personal element to it, and it's hard. There's a reason why you can't remove yourself from the personal element, because then your art wouldn't be your art. But it is, if you're doing it as a job, if you're doing it as a career, and you're trying to push, those boundaries, you do have to pull yourself back from it a little bit and understand that other people are going to see it as a product, and you want them to an extent, but you also want to invite them into the personal element as well. But there's a weird balance there of, this is really personal to me, don't say anything about it, and wanting them to feel something about it without being harsh or mean, or like, some people just throw stuff out there. They pull stuff out of their hat and they just throw it around like it doesn't have consequences. And I take a little issue with that. But I try, and I'm not perfect at this at all, but I do try to pull myself back and ask, why do they say that? And try not to take it as personally, which is really hard. I'm really sensitive. And most people, most artists especially, are. You kind of have to be. So like I said, it's a weird, vicious circle.
Yeah, and you know what? There's also a really limiting aspect to positive feedback,
Hmm.
because if you draw something, and okay, I've drawn this thing. Okay, this is something that I draw now. I'm kind of good at. So you draw that thing a couple of times, and it becomes part of your style, or your part of your portfolio, whatever you want to call it. It becomes something that you've done.
Yeah.
But the more positive feedback you receive on those things, the more you're encouraged to do them. Like, people like when I do this, so I'm going to keep doing that. And the problem is that most of your growth is going to come from doing stuff you suck at,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Like, stop
You
doing the
want to
stuff
be
you're already good
comfortable.
at, right?
Yeah.
Like, right? But like, you have to keep, like, so like, I always kind of liken this to the way NFL players will watch a game tape after the game,
Yeah.
right? And they will watch what they did and watch where they failed, and then make sure that that mistake doesn't happen again, right?
Yeah.
So like, I think that art being so multidisciplinary, and my original art journey started in comics, and like, for me now, the respect that I have for comic book artists, because they have to be able to draw absolutely anything from any angle: cities,
Yeah.
planetscapes, aliens, spaceships, guns, battles, everything, right? 22 pages of it every month.
Yeah.
like on this insane deadline. I mean, it's just like they're magicians, right? So like
Yeah.
my whole point of view about the number of skill sets that have to come together in order to do that well, you've got to understand perspective. You've got to be able to do landscapes. Those are disciplines all by themselves.
Yeah.
Human anatomy is a totally separate discipline. The body in motion, drapery is a different thing, right? Like, I mean, like light and color and values and all of that stuff is different disciplines. And the number of disciplines that have to come together in order for us to be able to do what we do well is a constant state of, well, I'm already good at this thing, and now I'm going to try to bring in this too, and I'm going to suck at this for a little while.
Yeah. Yeah. Right? I have my hands currently, because that was a point. And I mean, part of it is because my husband's military, so we move around quite a bit, which means starting over to an extent. And I just got to a point, I remember it was a couple years after my son was born, and I said, I need something to break this block. Like, I could go and I could sit down and I could draw mermaids, and I could draw the mermaids the same way that I've always done them, and I could do my watercolors. But I felt like I was stuck. And I'm like, as wonderful as they are and as well received and as much as I love them, I need something different. And that was the point where I said, I think I just need to work with color for a little bit. I need to see what happens here. I need to free my brain and get things moving again, because I just felt stuck. So I started doing the poured acrylic paintings. And because I had comfort with how colors worked together, they turned out pretty good. But there was lots of different new techniques and new styles and new canvas sizes, because I always used to work, fairly small for the watercolors and illustrations, but now I could do these giant which opens up this whole other level of your brain artistically. And then I thought, well, what else can so I've gotten into so many things over the last couple of years, and people are probably looking at my stuff thinking, what is she doing? Is there something I don't know if people think that I'm a little off the wall lately, which whatever, I'm an artist, I'm supposed to be. But there's so many different styles and so many different, but it's growth. And I needed that. I needed to push past everything that was stopping me. Because once you hit a really big artistic wall, getting past that and knowing what to do to get past that is tough. For me, I instinctively knew, like, I just sat with it and I thought, what do I need? What do I need inside? Like, what is happening that I need to do to get past this block? And for me, it was colors. It was just, I need something free flowing. I need something just expressive and, unlike anything that I had done before. So I just started, and away we go. But you grow.
Yeah, well, I think that the takeaway from that is that you were no longer being challenged by the work that you were doing. You knew how to do it well enough, and you'd done it often enough that, like, the challenge it represented was no longer there. And part of, I think, what keeps us being artists is because it's always challenging, right? Like, I'm always trying to draw something that I haven't drawn before, right? Like, I drew a wolf the other day, and I'm like, normally I'm a figurative artist. Like, I like portraits and I like people, and like, I was doing art time with my sons who were currently living in another state, and like, we did this Zoom call, and like, I'll put up I'll share a screen with them, like, I'll pull up a picture and we'll all draw the same thing. But like, they wanted to draw a wolf, and I'm like, I'll draw a wolf, cool. And like, I love drawing wolves now. Like, I love drawing animals. Like, I didn't know, like, I just got commissioned to do these 5 horse paintings that I'm loving.
Yeah.
Right? But it's the coolest thing, because like, so much of my work has been portraiture and figurative.
Yeah.
That I'm now being challenged and being stretched. And it's kind of like if you went to the gym and kept lifting a 10-pound weight, sooner or later, your muscle's no longer challenged by that weight.
Yeah.
You've got to increase the load, right? You have to increase the load in order to keep growing.
Yeah. That was the funny thing about all of the when you do start to push and you do start to, and it's not necessarily to the extreme that I went. Like, I went so far away from illustrative work. It was just like color, abstract, completely different and altogether. But when I started doing that, eventually I started wanting to come back to my mermaids, but I had different skills that I didn't know or realize that I was acquiring along that route that I could now bring back to my mermaids and make them different. And I have different ways of drawing mermaids now, and different, like, all these ideas exploding all at once. And it just felt like, for so long, because my husband went through a very grueling training process. He's he's a pilot with the Canadian military. He does search and rescue, flies the big Hercules airplanes. But the whole process in doing that was a 10-year process. My son was born 3 years into his university courses. And I think he's had 3 different addresses. He ended up with 3 different addresses in under 5 years. So the constant change that brought about was another aspect. And it just it was another element that kind of added to a bit of the block. Like when you're constantly having to uproot and you're trying to function in chaos, it makes it difficult. So that was a point I thought, well, if we're doing this, why don't I just try the different things? Why don't I just, see what happens? Because I mean, we're on this journey. I know it's going to be kind of tumultuous. It's going to bring us different places. We're not going to be settled for a little while. Why not throw it all up in the air and see what sticks? So that's what I've been doing. And now we're a little more settled. And I'm starting to feel a little more settled with my work in different avenues and seeing, where they kind of take me.
And I think that's brilliant. One of the things that I find myself in resistance to, and there's some judgment involved here, which I'm aware of and I'm fighting, is that I see some people whose work reaches this place where like they've been kind of regurgitating the same thing over and over again, right? Mm-hmm. But with a different hat, right? They keep changing the clothes on the same drawing, right? And I'm kind of like, and this has become their niche. Yeah. Niche, the both of those things, right? Yeah. So, and there's a part of me that I keep shying away from, I keep moving away from that. I don't want to get that set in anything. And so I keep pushing myself and I'm constantly inspired by some of my friends, again, in the art community that I wouldn't have found otherwise. People who continue to inspire me by how far they're willing to stretch and how they're willing to fail and how they're willing to grow from it. Yeah. Iris Compete. I don't know.
Yeah, I've seen her work. Yeah,
I love Fairies of the Fault Lines is magnificent, but then she turns to sculpture, and then I'm like, what the hell? How are you so good at this? What the hell, right? Because for years I've been following her, not doing sculpture, and all of a sudden, boom, she's doing amazing sculptures, and I'm like, I think that creativity by itself is a muscle, and I think that the more that we're willing to expand our definition of what that can mean to us, because I find that so many people like Chris Malador, right? He's a terrific artist, but he also plays music, right? Yes. Delphine the same way, right? I play the guitar, right? Yeah. And that creativity, right? Just kind of oozes out of us, and we're willing to work that muscle because of what it does for us spiritually and emotionally and mentally.
Yeah. Another fun story. My husband's actually a big guitar guy, and he's played guitar probably for as long as I've known him. So I've known him since I was about 9. And I could never, we have a couple of guitars, and I could never get my hands because I have small hands. So it really bothered me. I'm like, I want to play something, but I can't do it. So for my birthday this year, they actually got me a ukulele, and I've been using ukulele. But I was sitting here, amidst the pandemic, going, there's something in me, I need music. I need another outlet. And part of my brain is going, are you crazy? That's another thing. But another part of me, the deep part where all the creativity stems from, was sitting there going, you have to do this. You can't not do this. But it's amazing. It's amazing how it ventures out and comes full circle. You tap into one level of creativity and it affects everything else that you're doing. It is a muscle. You have to work it out. If you don't, you kind of get stuck.
Yeah, and that kind of stifling yourself is you've got all of this plumbing running through your house, right? But if you can't flush the toilet in one bathroom, you're always going to know that that's there, right? You can't use that bathroom anymore, right?
Don't use that one.
Don't use that one, right? But
yeah,
you know what I mean? It's important to understand that you're allowed to have multiple outlets for all of that energy that's coming through you, and I think that's super important. Okay. I'm going to end this here because I would literally talk to you forever about all of this stuff. You've been such a gift to the show. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, no, this was terrific. I think that the conversations about anxiety are super important to have because I
Yeah.
think that so many people suffer from it and might not realize how it manifests because it doesn't always look like a panic attack, right?
Hmm.
Sometimes it just looks like imposter syndrome, and sometimes it looks like procrastination, right? Why am I
Yeah.
procrastinating on this thing,
Yeah.
right? Your
Yeah.
your stress response to things can be just you taking a lot of naps or failing to answer that email when you should have, or like these are all stress responses.
Yeah.
So
And
becoming aware of
recognize.
that and yeah, recognizing that and finding the mental tools that you need to go forward is important for the artistic path. So thank you
Yeah.
so much for
Thank
joining us,
you.
everybody.
I
Maigan Lynn.
also thank you. I just wanted to say really quickly, I appreciate immensely that you. I know Dell kind of like pushed you, said, "Hey, this is a." It is though. It is. It's a missing element in the art community, and I'm so grateful for it because it opens up conversations that some people. It's like anxiety. You don't know unless it's kind of presented sometimes. So having this as an outlet for anybody who's just coming onto the art scene or who has questions or who wants to learn, like with Kira about the marketing end of things, or branding or, perseverance or every element of what it takes to succeed. I have found, and I've been doing this for a long time, but I find such a huge benefit to these interviews, even myself. Like it's amazing. So I want to say thank you for doing these. I love them.
Thank you so much. That means a lot to me. It really does. All right, well,
It's just you need a fan.
I promised myself I wasn't gonna cry. All right.
Hand you an award. Do you have your speech ready?
I'd like to thank the Academy and my mom.
Excellent.
You guys are the best.
Yeah.
All right, thank you so much, and we'll see you next week. Next week, our guest is Siddharth Chaturvedi, and I'm so excited to welcome him. I hope I'm pronouncing that name right. It's one of those things where I've known him online for years, and I've never had to say his name out loud before. But if you're familiar with his Inktober drawings, you're in for an exciting show because, man, he's a fantastic artist, and I'm excited to bring him onto the show next week. And Maigan Lynn, what a gift to have you here. Thank you for your vulnerability and your willingness to talk to us.
Oh, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Guys, you've been watching Works in Progress with Frank Fridella. I'm Frank Fridella. We'll see you next time.
Bye.